Hello and welcome to the FMG podcast with the first episode of 2019. With me, as always, Adam and Andy.
G'day.
But we got a lot of good topics, but before we get into anything, I have noticed that our FMG podcast is not receiving the views it deserves. We're kind of averaging about 50 views here. So I'm thinking about some kind of campaign where you, the listeners, can go out and maybe do some like FMG graffiti to raise promote the podcast, promote some. We do encourage vandalism if you want to get involved in that. And then send us in your pictures and we will feature them in the podcast.
My recommendation is to find your local cop shop and just cover the walls in FMG.
Oh, yeah. Or just in your local public toilet, right next to the engraved swastika, you can just engrave FMG.
Is that an association we want, Carl?
Oh, yeah,
our name
true.
is the etched in Nazi swastika on the
Oh,
toilet
yeah,
wall.
true.
I was feeling
Next
more
to
like
the
if any of
glory.
our listeners knew Banksy, we could just get him to do an Etch-a-Sketch or something for us. That'd be pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Or like next to the glory hole in one bathroom or something.
Oh my God, no.
But
We already
Here's an
have enough
idea.
people asking us what FMG stands for. And it's just like, oh no, what's going on?
If you live near to an abandoned warehouse with intact windows, break out the windows in the pattern of FMG.
guys, or better yet, just walk up to someone and just go FMG and punch them right in the face. That's
Scream at them.
FMG! I look forward to seeing this on the news. Oh
So-
dear.
Local ethnic gang FMG.
a current affair.
Yeah, I could just imagine this. FMG gang has come out of nowhere. We still don't understand what FMG stands for.
We got some name change suggestions from one of our fans, but we've
Ooh.
decided to stick with FMG. But when it comes to 2019, me and Adam are definitely not about New Year's resolutions.
Well, broadly, yeah. I mean, okay, here's the problem with New Year's resolutions, I think. I mean, the obvious one is that no one ever fucking follows through on them. For me, what I find is usually a better approach is to just have general life goals that you try to meet over the course of the entire year. And then at New Year's, you can sort of say, okay, well, because, I mean, come on, by December, you've probably mostly given up on them. I don't really believe in this idea that, you should have some set goal for this year that you're going to meet, because it's not going to happen. It's just a waste of time. It's something that you tell people, oh, well, I'm going to lose 20 kilos this year. And they go, oh, wow. Well done for making that resolution, which you will definitely reach.
But Andy's actually given a New Year's resolution. He's told me what it is that is actually achievable. So
Well, I've actually got quite a few here, but since we're all just bashing New Year's resolutions, I don't feel like I want to actually share some of these.
Well,
so
no,
I
you
think
got to
I'll-
share it now.
Oh no! Well, I definitely agree with you there, Adam, in that it's literally just a new calendar year. There's a lot of ceremony that comes into it, but really, when people are like, "Yeah, I'm gonna lose 20 kilos," like they're setting the bar so high, it's like someone making a to-do list of the person they really dream they wish they could be. So I've got a couple here, greater self-determination and reliability, because I thought
Andy, that's literally the opposite of achievable.
That's like
no.
My
I
New Year's
just said,
resolution
no.
for 2019 is to just be better.
Exactly. That's why I was just
more
like,
seriously, I mean, you're basically just making my case for me, Andy, because what you said isn't really a New Year's resolution at all. It's just a resolution.
thanks.
But what
Thanks,
else is on the list?
Well, actually, as a segue into our next topic, personally, I really wanted to jump into some more Australian films. Actually, I've always been a bit of a fan.
So smooth. That's segue.
I know. No, this is great. Yeah. In my
the
notepad.
next topic we we're going to talk about was basically about Australian films. Are Australian films good? Do you recommend? It's basically everything that encompasses it.
Yeah, well, personally, I was just going for the vibe of Australian films because just to quote one of the best ones, I personally really would like to watch a lot more Australian films. I only watched Simply Ballroom, I think, last year, and I thought that was bloody fantastic. I've got a couple of Australian films like Animal Kingdom and things I just think are, really solid as a film. But I just feel like, as a person, I've taken a lot of globalized culture, a lot of, Hollywood films, British comedies, Japanese anime, that kind of stuff. But I feel like sometimes I'm missing out on local stories or just films that you could show to someone and be like, this is Australia, this is Australian humor, just to show it as an example and just, have a bit of pride in our story. So yeah, it's one of my New Year's resolutions, and I've found in a couple of people I've talked to this about, they've just gone, oh yeah, Australian films, they're kind of, they're just quirky comedies and that's it, or they try too hard to be Australian. Like I've even said when I think, but I was trying to invite some people over to watch a film. I'm like, oh yeah, it's an Australian film, blah blah blah. And they're like, oh yeah, Andrew, it's an Australian film. You love those. I'm just like, whoa, like where is this kind of what was it like? It just disinterest
Resentment.
coming from? Yeah, and a bit of resentment. Like it wasn't just like it's going to be a dodgy film. It's like, oh, it's an Australian film. Oh, okay, and they're just like prejudging it there. So I was just curious about you lads and what your kind of the vibe you get from Australian films. Like, how do you feel about just Australian films in general?
First of all, I mean the Australian film industry as it stands is generally pretty garbage. Uh, it doesn't produce a lot of quality. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but I mean it's a small industry with not a huge amount of money in it, which is I think part of the reason why quirky comedies, as you say, are more common outputs in terms of Australian films
Yeah.
because they're cheaper to make. I mean, it's
Mm.
not like you need all the special effects of a Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of sad that the big Australian Hollywood blockbuster, Australia, they brought out a couple of years. Oh, it's about 5 years ago now. I'm trying to remember, but I never
No,
watched that. I
older,
never even.
older.
Yeah, I looked at it and just went, yeah, that's just garbage. I'm not going to watch that. Even myself saying that, it makes me
I
feel a
never
bit
saw
bad.
it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like
There's
having a
none.
film called Australia. It's like, why would you watch a film? It sounds so pretentious already. Like we're
What do you
trying
mean?
too hard.
Americans make movies called America.
Yeah, but they usually say American
Yeah, but they're
something.
also pretty cringy, to be honest.
Yeah, to be honest.
But anyway, I mean, what you sort of touched on, Andy, is sort of the wider Australian phenomenon of culture cringe, which is probably a topic that's a little bit too broad for us to cover now.
Hmm.
But it's interesting. I think a lot of people do have a lot of prejudgments in terms of things that are Australian cultural exports, and it's been the case for a long, long time. Like
Hmm.
more than 100 years. You look at what would now be considered the classic Australian artists as painters. They could not make it in Australia. They had to go to the UK, for example, to get recognised. And then once they had a bit of cultural cachet from the mother country, they could come back and be treated as serious artists. A lot of Australians sort of need that external validation in terms of things that are produced here.
I think I'm a lot more harsh than you guys. I think that the Australian film industry is a joke, and I think that the only people they have to blame for it is themselves. They refuse to learn how cinema industries actually work around the world. That people blame Australian people, like, why don't you like Australian films? No, why aren't Australian production companies making films that Australians want to see? That's my biggest pet peeve with Australian industry. Like Film Victoria, which is the main funding body who funds most of the films coming out of Melbourne, they have such a strict criteria on what, in order for them to fund a movie, it has to have this cultural relevance, has to depict this amount of society and everything like that. When they're totally oblivious to the idea of, what makes the American film industry boom and have money? they give the people what they want. What do people want to see? Well, you know why Mad Max and Wolf Creek and all these movies did so well, or this not all these movies, this select few. It's because they were exploitation films that at the time people wanted to see violence on the road, and they gave people what they wanted. They didn't try and
Yeah,
show.
no, but that's true. Like Australian exploitation, that was a big thing that they just ended up getting copied around the world.
Exactly.
Just
Well,
as
I mean,
like yeah,
to an
just copying the
extent,
Road
but I
Warrior.
mean, Carl, I don't think anyone ever put out a survey and was like, what are Australians looking for these days? And the
No, but
overwhelming
that's the thing.
response was road violence.
No, that's the thing, Adam, because like you look at other, I've talked about this with Andy, how you look at other cinema industries. For example, in Italy during the 60s and 70s, the Italian people wanted Westerns. They were into Westerns like no other. So the Italian film industry churned out a shit ton of Westerns over and over and over again, because that's what people wanted to see. That wouldn't happen in Australia. When they made Mad Max, or, for example, when they made Wolf Creek, we didn't see a huge influx of horror films similar to Wolf Creek. Instead, we saw more cultural, like about, oh, this Australian going through this issue that no one gives a shit about. Wolf Creek did well. Start pushing out all those films similar to that. That's what. Look at the
I think
superhero industry.
there were a bunch of Wolf Creek clones. They're all just terrible.
We'll
Good
have to
clones.
research this.
But I just think I've seen time and time again the Australian film industry giving people what they think they should be, that they think they should watch, rather than what they do want to watch. You need to put bums on seats. That's what
Mm.
Hollywood does so well. They
Yeah,
exclude
but
everything.
the difference, Carl, is that Hollywood is not publicly funded and Film Victoria is. And again, like everything when it comes to public funding in Australia, the culture wars are fought on endlessly. That's why there's such tight restrictions on who can get funding and what for and so on.
Isn't that
It's because
terrible
it's
though?
public money.
Isn't that terrible that public money is the only avenue in order to make a film of a decent budget in Australia? The private industry should be huge.
Yeah, it should be like if anything there, it should just be like, look, if you just relax these cultural restrictions that like these criteria that we have to hit for like certain like anyway anything like that, like if you could just be like, look, we could just make a film that people enjoy, it'll make us a ton of money, you'll get money back, and then you can pump that into more educational cultural films, like it's not like people like summer blockbusters for myriads of reasons, but they're always like the biggest cash cows, and they always bring in a ton of money. Well, actually, not always, because they have a lot of really big crashes. But like, I don't feel like I agree with Carl is that you're just not going to get that real bang for buck, that real draw, that real return of investment if you're just constantly going for this cultural. Like we've got to talk about Australian legend and talk about how they overcame everything, or something like that. Like as I said, one of my favorite films was Animal Kingdom, and that is literally, it's a true story about a crime family, but it keeps it very bare bones about like a history of what's going on or anything like that. It's just the acting performances of the cast. This grandmother who is just I'm trying to remember who played her. She won a
She
I
got
think it was
nominated for an Oscar that year, but that's
yeah.
exactly that was during the boom of Australians were really interested in Australian crime and crime
Yeah, and
dramas,
that's
and they,
true because you had Underbelly and everything going through it. But it
yeah,
was just like that was it. It was just like, look, we've had a series, people interested in Australian crime. Let's bring out a movie, and it was freaking beautiful. Like tense, but it was still Australian in a lot of ways. Like the mannerisms and things. It was just nice. And I reckon I could show that to a foreign audience and be like, yeah, this is like an Australian crime drama. It's really good. I guess what kind of also spurned this was years and years ago, me and my family were traveling overseas. We were in Canada and Vancouver, and we were visiting some family friends there, or some people. Anyway, and at one point we're just like, oh, we'll do like a cultural exchange. We've seen a lot of Canada. It's really nice. We'll show you something Australian. And Dad was like, all right, well, we'll find an Australian film at the DVD store. And it's just like, oh, wow, this is a real, like, shot in the dark. You're going to find an Australian film in Vancouver, and this was like early 2000s, so it's not like you had any kind of streaming service or digital entertainment or anything. It's
I was
just
going to say, Andy, a
you
DVD store.
I know, you're going to your Blockbuster. That's how far back we're going. And walked up to the clerk. It was just like, "Oh, g'day. We're Australians. We want to show some friends an Australian film. Do you have any?" And I was like half thinking, "Oh, it's just going to be Mad Max or something," But the guy was just like, "Oh yeah, I think we got one," And he walked into the back and he came back with The Castle. And I was just sitting there going, "That is the weirdest film to find in the middle of Canada," but it is still like a really quality Australian film, even if some people might think it's a bit cringy now. But it's like
Didn't
it's
make a lot of
still
money till very later down the track.
it's more. I would say I can imagine it being a cult film, but it's just a really nice little Australia, like a piece of Australia right there, done. You could just show that off to someone. You could sell it off. As I said, it's just a quirk of comedy, so it's not going to be like for everybody. But it's just you know, it's just nice to be able to show that to someone and be like, yeah, this is Australian. This is ours,
And
Have a bit of...
actually, Andy, we've circled right back around because I was listing my favourite Australian films, and
Here
next
we
up
go.
on the list would have been The Castle because I fucking
Yay.
love it, and I
It's
think
great.
it's great. And anyone
So
who disagrees
quotable.
is wrong.
True.
Well,
Too true. They're not Australian if they disagree.
well, I want to put a case study forward that basically, when it comes to my point on, let's say back in 2014, in the space of about 6 months, we had two Australian movies come out. Okay, one was Holding the Man. Okay, which had Jeffrey Rush, who's an Oscar-winning actor. It had Anthony LaPaglia, who's respected in Australia. It also starred one of my friends as well. He had about 8 lines of dialogue, believe it or not, Thomas
Nice.
Hatchman. And it's on Stan, and it was a film entirely privately funded. It cost about $1.4 million was their budget, and it was about a gay couple, in particular one gay young man, and he eventually gets HIV, which develops into AIDS, and then he passes away. Spoiler alert. But anyway, my point being is also around that time, there was a zombie movie released, a very extremely low budget Australian zombie movie that just hit it up on the Pirate Bay, and it just took off from there and did extremely well. And it goes to show that film, The Holding the Man, was the better film in every conceivable way critically, but it made $0 because audience do not want to watch a movie about an AIDS patient. That's not what Australian audiences wanted to watch at that time in 2014, 2015. They wanted to watch zombies because that was when zombies were at their peak.
I was about to say, I haven't heard of Holding the Man, but that zombie film, does that have a chick with a 4-barrel shotgun in it?
I think so. I think it's called
yeah,
Wormwood.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of that at least. That's the other thing. I haven't heard of
Holding the Man.
Holding the Man. Yeah, geez. Now I feel bad. I automatically forgot the name. Jeez.
Yeah, and it just goes to show that a good film is irrelevant if you're giving, and the more money our industry makes in Australia, the more we can keep good actors in Australia and keep them from leaving to America. And because as soon as I know, I've talked to a lot of people in the film industry when I was studying film, and a lot of people, as soon as they go to America, they never come back. They're like, I've made it if I go to Hollywood, and they never want to come back. They only come back for passion projects half the time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last Australian film I watched at the theatre, and that would have been The Water Diviner with Russell Crowe. And that's just based off the Anzac legend as well, which a lot of films seem to just revolve around or go back to. Yeah.
I actually know
a very long time since I've seen an Australian film in the cinema. In fact, I think the last one I saw probably would have been For School.
Yeah,
with my class. No, not the name of the. That's. No, I mean, literally going to the cinema for school, Carl. There's no such film that I'm aware of called. Anyway.
Water Diviner didn't make much money. Usually, just so you guys know, in order for a film to be considered a success, it needs to roughly make 3 times its budget, because its budget only factors in its production costs, not its media costs. So
Yeah, the advertising costs and stuff like that. Yeah.
Water Diviner made less than double its price, so I wouldn't consider it a financial success.
Ah, shame. It was actually
Even though
right.
it's got 62% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
I've been doing my bit to share around the good news of FMG, and as a result, I think we probably have at least a couple of international listeners. So, for their benefit, I think we should list all of the Australian films that we have seen and maybe would like to see or should see.
Okay,
Because
cool.
I think if we go if we focus too much on individual films, maybe we're kind of missing the forest for the trees to some extent. And also,
True.
I think there's probably a lot of films that people have seen and wouldn't realize we're Australian. So,
All right. I'll start off.
Just before you list them out, something that is a topic for debate, but maybe for another day, is how do you consider something an Australian film? Because that's something that,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
because for example, The Great Gatsby was filmed in Australia with a predominantly Australian cast with an Australian director, but financed by an American company. But then you got like Ten Canoes, which is filmed in Australia, financed by a foreign company, and is by a Dutch director, I think, and that's considered an Australian film, but Gatsby isn't. So it's kind of like, what do you even like? Ten Canoes, the whole crew and the director are all not Australian.
To an extent, I think it's kind of a trap, right? If it's successful, then it's not an Australian film. But yeah, no, it's a very good question. There's a lot of I don't think there's a good answer, to be honest.
Personally, I would say that it should be about Australia. Like that's my line. It should be about something culturally Australian. That's Australian film to me.
What?
You know, something that I could look at and be like, that's in Australia, or that's an Australian thing.
Nah, totally disagree. Something doesn't have to revolve around Australian culture to be considered an Australian movie. I can't make a movie just about a topic that transcends all cultures, and I've made it in Australia or on Australian budget, and you're like saying, "Nah, Carl, that's not Australian."
All right.
I don't know who.
Okay.
I don't know who made that film.
I feel like it's less
That's a French
Australian.
film.
Well, hey, if they all speak in French, then I'll be like, well, is this Australia? I don't understand any of this. Like, what's going on? I don't know. I feel like it should.
Totally
I feel like it should be.
Happy Feet. That's 100% Australian film. It's got nothing to do with Australia.
Bambi is an Australian film. I don't feel that's very Australian. Like I look at that and I'm like, that's not Australian. That'd be something we'd be like,
you mean Babe?
Oh, Happy Feet, that's Australian. Oh, the Lego Movie, that's Australian. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's what movies should be. It shouldn't have to be like glaringly Australian.
Yeah, true. I guess I feel like it's 50-50. I feel like it's good that you make it films. Like that's fantastic. I wouldn't mind stories about us. That's my main.
But no one wants to see that.
I want to see that. I want to see more of it.
No one goes to those movies.
This is your problem, Carl, because Film Victoria is full of Andys.
Yes. You know
full
what,
of Andys who also haven't gone to see the films have just been like now going, maybe I should have watched those films. Maybe I should have put my money down.
Well, this is the thing. I don't think it's a question with an answer.
But hold up,
because there's it depends on what you really want, right? Andy's point is that if you make a film which is functionally indistinguishable from a Hollywood film, then it's not an Australian film in the sense of adding anything Australian apart from potentially who made it, where, and with what money. There's nothing culturally Australian about it, and I can understand that concern. I think it's fair enough.
Yeah,
but at the same time, Carl, at the same time, I mean, I completely agree that if that's the kind of standard that you're going to maintain, then there's a huge swath of films which either you can't make or you can make, but which will be considered somehow not really Australian, despite maybe being very good. I mean, I think Babe's a great movie, and I don't think that you should say that.
But he meant to say Babe, not Bambi. And Babe and Happy Feet.
Did I say Bambi? Damn.
Yeah,
You
you
did,
said Ben.
yeah.
And they are hugely Happy Feet and Babe were hugely successful and had
Yep.
huge casts. I'm proud of those movies.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Andy would have been saying, stick a kangaroo in the Antarctic and call it Australia.
No, you could have some kangaroos bouncing in the background. Like, I just mean, it's like, I just feel like if you have to tell someone, hey, that's an Australian film, they go, oh, really? It's like, okay, to me, that's not an Australian film.
Oh,
No, but it's obviously still Australian, still financed by Australians, could be directed, could be acted by Australians, but they're putting on foreign accents. It's just like, to me, that's not what I'm after here. I'm after something I could show someone, and be like, this is an Australian film, and it shows you something about Australia in
I'm
some way.
after a good movie to watch, Andy.
Hey,
I'm not
me
after
too.
something to show
Me too,
people.
mate. That's why I'm always disappointed by the Star Wars prequels and a lot of the newest Star Wars films. It's just not. They're just not good films.
All right, Carl, reset the counter. Number of conversations without bringing up Star Wars. Back to zero.
Adam, did you want to list off some Australian films you like before
Well,
we?
Andy was going to do it. You didn't even get in.
No, because yeah, okay.
No.
Ed, let's hear it.
We could do one at a time. All right.
All right.
Let's start with Adam because he's like neutral ground, so that's okay.
Supposedly. All right. So we've already mentioned Mad Max and the Castle.
All right.
Kenny is a great film. I think it actually still holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I talked to the director about that on Kenny. I think I've met him. He's a really talented guy. It's an underrated film. I think Chopper was a fantastic film, and it goes to show like Brad Pitt loved it as well because he's pretty much done like every other film by Andrew Dominic since he's been a part of, and I think Chopper encompasses that was like the first big crime Australian piece of media that really took that off. I thought that was a good movie.
That's definitely what I am planning to see this year. That's for sure.
And I love the Mad Max movies with a passion. I think they're
wait, one at a time, Carl.
We already talked about it though.
Well, I was going to suggest Mad Max, but since that already got suggested, simply Baz Luhrmann's Simply Ballroom. I reckon that is a pretty stellar, if a little weird film about a ballroom competition. And I think it hits a lot of like This Is Australia kind of like little points in there, even if the people who own the milk bar are Spanish. I don't feel like that's quite an ethnicity you usually see running a milk bar, but it doesn't matter. It's a great film. You should watch it. It's great. Just watch it. It's it's kind of like the precursor before he decided to nick off and do Moulin Rouge.
He's done a lot of films.
Yeah, he's done a lot. So yeah.
Baz Luhrmann. Adam, do you have any others?
Well, yeah. Well, not necessarily recommendations, but just listing films that as they've come to mind. Well, we've already mentioned Babe and Happy Feet. Well, okay, this is pretty average actually. Strange Bedfellows. I remember I saw that in the cinema. Young Einstein is a hell of a film. For me, it is definitely in so bad it's good territory.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Adam, do you want to tell people like the basic plot of the story?
Oh God, no. I know a lot of people really don't like it because it's one of those things that has kind of everyone's been oversaturated with it. But I still like Crocodile Dundee actually.
Yeah,
I know it'd probably be a bit too much, but for what it is, it's good. It's a good movie. I know that it's like kind of painful for the cultural wound that it inflicted on the country thanks to its overseas success. But I mean, come on, it's fun.
I'd agree. It's definitely fun, and to be honest, it certainly hits a nice standard of like it's quite quotable, which is good for a film. Like it's that beautiful line, like oh yeah, you call that a knife? This is enough. It just all the mutations that have come out of there, like. I guess anyone Australian who's travelled overseas enough has had to deal with that, as well as people saying Foster's is Australian, which it's not. No one drinks Foster's in Australia. For all international viewers, it's all a lie. But yeah, I definitely agree. Crocodile Dundee.
I just want to make two more suggestions. I think the Ned Kelly movie is underrated. It has like a really amazing cast when you look at it. Heath Ledger, Oscar winner, has Orlando Bloom, has Naomi Watts, has been nominated twice for an Oscar. Jeffrey Rush, who's won an Oscar. Joel Edgerton.
Oh, wow.
I think it is a yeah, it's a really underrated movie. I think Ned
I
Kelly's
mean,
good, and
for what
also
it's worth, first ever feature-length film
Oh yeah,
was The Story of the Kelly Gang,
yeah,
made in Australia. So there you go.
which
can't take that off us.
and also Ballabo as well. I want to recommend that's on Stan. Ballabo is about the war in East Timor and about the 5
Oh
Australian journalists
yeah,
who killed.
I heard about that. Is any good?
I'd recommend that one too.
Oh, I better put that
Yeah,
on the
it's
list
really
as
good.
well. But yes,
What else is
I
it?
need to watch
Gallipoli?
that.
I think I've actually seen Gallipoli.
Yeah, it's really good. It's Peter
Yeah, it's
Weir
very good.
directed it. Peter
Hmm.
Weir, who's won an Oscar, and also it's got Mel Gibson in it as well before he went crazy.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
was that early Mel Gibson?
Very
Young Mel
early.
Gibson? Yeah.
84 was Gallipoli.
Wow, yeah, that is pretty old. Actually, have you
Oh,
got any of you guys
another one
seen?
I've seen is Kokoda, which was kind of average, I thought, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's one.
that's
okay.
what I heard about it. Yeah, have you guys
Yeah,
ever seen Crackerjack?
yeah, that's a
Yes,
classic.
yeah. It's not
Yeah,
really my kind of thing, but yeah, it's a if you're into that kind of thing,
Yeah, Ocker
more kind
humor.
of yeah,
yeah,
it kind of almost yeah. Well,
yeah.
anyway, yeah.
All right, cool. I feel like that's a pretty long list already for poor viewers and myself to slowly smash our way through over the next couple of months. So yeah, enjoy everybody.
So the next topic we're looking at is hobbies that you'd like to get into, but you for whatever reason you haven't, and given please give the reason why you haven't as well. So Andy, you suggested this topic, so why don't you take it away?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna brand myself here as a bit of a redneck, but guns would be my hobby.
Oh
Like
wait,
just
fuck, guys,
what?
we forgot about Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Oh, I haven't watched that one. Fuck yeah, add that to the list.
Okay, add that
uh,
to the list.
Add
I
that to the
wouldn't
list.
interrupt otherwise, but
and
that's important.
I
I mean,
also
that's
met
Hugo Weaving at his best.
met the first AD who worked on Priscilla Queen of the Desert as well. I'm just
Oh,
name
la-di,
dropping all these
la,
people I know. So-
la-di-da. Well, not
Wow.
really name dropping. You're just giving their title. Like, what was the actual name?
So I'm not going to mention his exact name because he works with. Oh well, anyone can really look look them
Yeah,
up.
true. There we go. Yeah, true. We all have
Yeah.
phones
Okay.
now on the internet, so yeah, it'll work.
Oh, also Rumper Stumper. That's another one.
Oh, that's another one. Okay. Gee, I'm gonna have to go back through this podcast
Definitely,
just to
definitely
list all these down. Jeez.
different style
Yeah.
to Priscilla, but
But yeah,
anyway,
I
yes.
guess to bring us
Guns.
Back to
back
the
onto hobbies that we probably shouldn't get into because we'd be too into them. Guns would be for me. I have had to hold myself back from like when I'm at pop culture conventions. Props are always a big part of it because people dress up as their favorite characters and things, and there's always gun props there, and I'm always holding myself back because I'm just like I just be too into it. Like I play enough video games with guns. I know too much about guns from watching YouTube videos and things like it's just something that I know I really shouldn't get into because I know it's just going to consume my life, and I'm just going to turn to that redneck who lives up in the bush and has like a whole doomsday room full of guns, and it's just going to be no. I don't want to be that person. I want to be a normal person. I like being a normal person. I'm not
You're
gonna.
like you're like one of the one of those hyperactive kids, Andy, who like finds a stick on the ground and every stick is a gun. You just pick it up, pew pew pew.
Adam, I would laugh, but that's actually quite true. It's actually quite serious.
So
Like
would you
it's
get
got
real guns?
oh.
That's what I thought you were going to go on that path because my cousin's just gotten into getting a whole. He's got like 6 guns now.
Holy shit! Wow. Okay. I don't know.
Probably too
Like,
many guns.
I feel like I yeah, true. I feel like I'd just like to travel over to the US and just there's I've looked up. There's a couple of different firing ranges. Like you got Las Vegas, and they have different kits where it's just like, oh, this is the Counter Strike kit. Here's all the guns from Counter Strike, and you just shoot all those and have a good time. And I feel like that's probably about as far as I'd like to get because I'm gonna have to be realistic. Am I ever gonna go like use a gun like for anything other than just me going whoa? Like just the mechanical aspect of it really fascinates me, and I probably would never go hunting. I'd probably never go to a shooting range and just, do like a competition or something. It'd just be me going, I really like this. This is really cool. It makes really cool sounds. And I've gotten to a level where I've gotten a couple of Nerf guns and I'm just like, that's it. I've already modified the internals on these so they fire twice as fast, twice as far. And, that's enough for me. I just feel like any further and that's, it's going to be too far. I'm going to cross a line and that'll be it. I won't be the Andy you knew. I'll be this new gun-toting, redneck Andy. And yeah. I like being me right now, so I'll keep it there. But do you guys have any I mean, that's kind of an extreme one, but do you have any hobbies yourself that you don't have the time, or you find you'd be too into if you jumped in on them?
Adam?
Not hobbies necessarily, but when we were discussing this, I remember that part of the inspiration came from a conversation that we've had more than once, Andy, which is like Dwarf Fortress, for example, is one of those games where I just know I would get sucked in, like it would press all my buttons. One of those things where it's just hyper detailed, and there's like a strong emergent storytelling element, or even something like Factorio, maybe, where it's really algorithmic. There's a lot of kind of engineering. Oh man, I would sink so many hours into those sorts of games that I am afraid to ever have a look.
Yeah,
Because I just feel like it would be too many lost hours.
Yeah,
I mean, I have enough. Yeah, I have enough time sinks as it is.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about those games is that you start small and you keep building, and there's always something next that you can build up to, and the map just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just like there's no time limit, so you can just go forever. And like myself, I've tried playing Dwarf Fortress at least 5 times, just from the stories you hear and just how quirky it is. Like, for our viewers, Dwarf Fortress looks like a game that came out in the 90s, or no, like the 80s or something, because it's all just
It's
it's
all
not
ASCII,
even
basically.
Yeah, it's all ASCII characters. So it's not like you'd imagine a new video game these days would be a lot of colorful characters and things, and they all have different shapes. It looks like a cartoon, to give one example. But this is just it's just tons of little tiles, and they all have letters or different shapes and things that are mostly just from the alphabet or a symbol, and that's how you denote what kind of tree it is. If that's a dwarf or the goblins are just green G's. That's what the goblins are, And it's like you start off with just a little team building up, starting off with a wagon, slowly building a fortress, and then people start coming to the fortress. So you make it bigger and you build rooms, and the dwarves go mad, so you have to try and help them. And then you're building complex lock systems to make tripwires in case the dragon comes through or the goblin army comes in. And you're just sitting there going, and you hear stories of legendary dwarf fortresses like Boat Murdered, which are just worth a read just in themselves. Just being like, this was a video game that someone played. This is the story they got out of it. Like, this is just
That's a famous example.
Yeah, very famous. Yeah, and I would almost just put it as if you ever wonder what Dwarf Fortress is, do that. But it's totally understand, Adam. It's just limitless potential, and you can just get lost in it. And it's just don't. Oh, now I'm slightly tempted. Oh, no. Maybe I'll have to add this to my things that I probably shouldn't get into because I'd be too into them.
My thing was Magic the Gathering and Card Fight Vanguard, like those kind of card games.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're really those never-ending hobbies that you just they bring out new sets and you have to buy all the new sets in order to play. And I've just really refrained from getting into them because I know it's just going to be a path of buying a bunch of useless cardboard.
That is, I can understand that, Carl. I know more than enough mates who have binders and binders and binders and binders of all the cards that they're playing, or they're bought, or the ones that they plan to buy for ludicrous amounts of money because of the different rule sets that allow you to play cards from the entire print catalog. Otherwise, you'd only be able to play with the current season of cards, and it's just, oh man, it just freaks me out that people could be that much into a card game like that. It's good, but I'm just like, it's just, ooh, it kind of freaks me out a bit, honestly.
Yeah, I guess it's a good way to make friends, like those kind of card games. But I think that they are just literally designed for you to just drain all your money in your bank account. And like I still think at one stage I might, somewhat get into it, but I don't know. I still try and put it off.
Don't, Carl.
Yeah,
it's a slippery slope.
No, I know exactly what you mean, because there's probably a whole huge number of possible hobbies which would definitely satisfy the question for me, but which I'm not even thinking of, because in my space of psychological possibilities, anything that's probably going to cost me too much money is not even considered. I'm too stingy, but probably there's a whole bunch of stuff which, if the monetary aspect wasn't a factor, they would probably sucker me in as well.
Well, time's a huge thing as well. Like you got to limit your time to these kind of things, especially as we get older.
Yeah, all those responsibilities start cropping up, and you just don't have all the time you used to have in your adolescence to just, I'm just going to spend 5 hours a day playing video games because I can. You just can't do that anymore.
Well, it's not even, I don't even want to spend that time. Even if I have the time, like I'll rather spend it on other things. We're going to move on. Now, when it comes to the next topic, it's a bit of a strange one, but Adam proposed the idea of talking about the question, what is your favorite, and what does that mean, and whether it's even a worthwhile question. So, do you want to explain to us your thought process there, Adam, before we continue it?
Well, geez, that's a hell of an intro. It's really not that complicated. The topic is very simple, actually. The point is that a lot of the times when we come up, or we're trying to come up with topics to talk about, or even just in regular conversation, or you're meeting someone new, one of those go-to questions is, what's your favorite X? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite music genre, or whatever? And I was just wondering what you guys think of that as a question. Is it a good question to ask? Because I don't think it is. I think it's a shit question.
If I could start off, I only think it's a good question if you're you know what you're talking, like the subject that you're talking about. Like you can't just, if you have no idea about, let's go with origami. That's just shooting something right in my head. It's just like, what's your favorite origami? And someone goes, oh yeah, I like the crane, whatever. And you're just like, I have no idea what that means. Like, what's the crane? Like if you can't just ask that question and have no bearing on it.
But I mean, that's true of any question, Andy. If you ask someone something they don't know anything about.
But I feel like if you're asking someone the favorite, you should know something about, like enough about that you can, because the whole idea of doing what's your favorite is that you go, if that's your favorite, I can prejudge you on, these.
Yeah, but I mean, all of us know, let's say, plenty about films.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not experts, but I think we're reasonably well versed. Okay. But if someone asks me, what's my favorite movie? I can't answer that. There's no good answer. There's no good way to respond.
But that's a bad way of framing that question then. That'd like be to say, like, what's your favorite food? And it'd be like, wow.
But it's a perfectly well-posed question. I mean, I understand on a semantic level exactly what's being asked. I simply can't answer it because it's stupid.
I disagree, Adam. I think I love what's your favorite questions. I ask them all the time, and I think
God, you sick
just
fuck.
just because you don't have a favorite movie doesn't mean that the question is bad because the person's asking. I think it's one of the easiest ways to get to know people and get to know your common interests with people. And I think about my favorite things all the time. I always think about I think about, oh, would I consider this my favorite album? Yeah, I'll probably at the moment I consider this my favorite album. And I think about all those kind of things. So I have those preconceived favorites already in my head, but I think they're great for getting to know people. And I'm always so interested to hear other people's favorite things in life because it also makes me want to go do that. Because if they say this is my favorite song, I'm like, I never heard of that song, but this is Adam's absolute favorite song, so I got to check this out. Like, I don't get why you think it's such a stupid question.
Well, because most people do not spend their waking hours considering what their favorite whatever is out of anything.
But
And
But I
most
also
feel like
because
most people
there's the things
consume
which
stuff.
are extremely multifaceted. You can't ask me. I mean, I can't tell you
oh
what my favorite
come
film
on,
is
Adam.
because
But
I can't compare, a serious drama and a light-hearted comedy and tell you which is the better movie. There's
Yeah,
no common ground to rate them on.
I
Not
feel like
everything
Adam,
can be put in an order from one up to whatever.
and this is what I
Things
think your
cannot
problem is,
always
Adam.
be ordered.
And that's what I think your problem is that you're making this hard, like, yeah, this one's number one, this one's number two. And then you're going through your entire, like, memory of films being like, which one did I enjoy the most? And just start
it's not a serious
categorizing into
question.
things. It's just,
No, I'm
it's
just
like,
if
you
someone
just,
asks me a question, I'm going to answer it. If they say, "What are your favorite films?" that's much easier. If someone said, what's your favorite science fiction film? Difficult, but more answerable. If someone says, what's your
well, then the problem is the framing device
what's a
then.
film that's been particularly impactful?
But Adam,
That's a
that's
very
just,
specific
no.
question with a
But
simple answer.
Well, see, that's the problem then. Then it's just the framing device. That's like you're just saying, "What's your favorite film?" Like it's too simple of a question to be like, "What's your favorite film from this year or from this genre?" Or, if you're meeting someone the first time and you went to like I don't know your film critics and you saw a couple of films, what was your favorite film? Of the ones we saw, that's a
Yeah,
little
but
easier.
Andy, that's my whole point.
But
Well,
I
you're
It's
feel like
not.
like if you
you,
go
You,
out on a date with someone, right, and you say, "Oh, so what do you like?" That is a great way to have a terrible conversation.
what
Okay?
happens
And
if
it's
you?
the
But what happens
exact
if you're
same
talking about the
principle.
food? You're
Well,
talking
that's
about the
different.
menu. No,
If you
that's not
say,
different. Like you're like, what does that even mean if we say, "What do you like?" That, of course, that's a bad question, but that's not so much the question's problem. It's just that the actual person asking the question just hasn't given enough context and literally just leaves the entire like human existence open for someone to be like, "What did you like?" What do you? Oh man,
Andy,
you're
if
I
you
not.
feel
just
like you're just saying it's not a bad question. It's just a question which is bad, and you could ask
no, no,
it
no.
differently and
It's
make it
not a
good.
bad question. It's just a question that's asked badly.
How do you ask it any differently? It's only like got how many? What is your favorite? Whatever. It's 5 words. But my thought is, I find that when I ask people their favorite things, like I think Adam, you're confusing favorites with best. There's a big difference there, and I
I'm
also
absolutely not.
well, whatever. I find I ask people, "What's your favorite song?" and most people can easily answer me. They're just like, "Oh, my favorite song's probably this." I
Yeah,
listen
but
to
that's
this all
because
the time.
people lie.
Well, how
So
so?
what?
Because it's not true.
Well, how do you
The
know that?
Because most people do not keep an active list of all of their favorite things in
No,
their
they don't.
heads like
No,
you.
no, but
If
they
I
might
go,
be
no, no,
like,
no, no, no. If
Okay.
I go up to someone and say, "What's your favorite whatever?" and they give it a moment of thought and they answer within, let's say, 10 seconds, then they have not considered every single film, for example, or every single song they've ever listened to in those 10 seconds and decided which ranked one is the highest. They've
but
just picked a song that they like a lot for the sake of social cohesion. This is
but
just a
Adam,
lie that we've all accepted so we can move on
No.
with our lives without wasting them on
but
stupid fucking questions, which
Adam,
fundamentally we all know deep down are stupid, but
Adam,
have to give an answer to because we got nothing else better to
Adam.
say.
I don't know what this question did to you in your past life that made you so angry about it, but I feel like Carl is the antithesis of that, where he's saying, "I've already thought about what my favorite one was." Like he's
No, but I
already
find you
he's
don't
already
forget.
ranking
All
them.
right.
You don't
If you are a
forget your
listener,
favorite
if
song.
you're a listener to this podcast, I want you to go into the comment section and tell me if you keep an updated list of all of your favorites in your mind at
just
all
tell us.
times.
Just tell us what your favorite film is right now. Like, don't think about it.
No,
Just tell us right now.
I
And then
think
tell us how long it took you to work it out. There
I
we go.
feel like
That's easy. Done.
I feel like your favorite thing isn't something that you have to think too hard about because it's such a thing that you like so damn much. It's obviously going to be one of the first things that come to your head. And I don't know about you guys, but when you say I keep like a categorized list, it's not that hard for me to understand what I like and dislike. It's not some amazing ability I have to remember things I
Yeah,
like.
but I like lots of things. I like lots of, it's like
And the problem is,
Andy.
Carl, that Adam then has to actually rank them in his brain going, well, I better get out the notepad and start like writing out the pros and cons for each one so I can like check them all out, you know?
Because that's what the answer to the question requires. And if you
No,
say
it
otherwise,
doesn't.
yes,
Oh, if you take 2
that's
minutes
my
to answer this
point.
question, Adam, then it's not a.
But that's the point. You can't take 2 minutes to answer the question. You have to take days. It's not a question which any human can meaningfully answer.
Well,
I
Carl, I
usually
think Adam's just saying you're not human. I think that's
I've
what he's
been
saying.
asked those kind of questions so much that I already have like those thoughts in the back of my head. And I feel like I've just had so many amazing conversations after asking those kind of questions, like where I've like really connected with someone like, oh, there's someone that's into like the same kind of things as I'm into. And
Yeah,
I
but
think
Carl, I'm not saying that people shouldn't ask other people what they like. Of course they should. In fact, I
what
completely agree that
you just said before,
the best, no, Carl,
you said what things do you like?
wait.
All right.
Exploring people's passions is, yes, you're exactly right. It can be one of the most rewarding ways to interact with people. But asking what their favorite of something is the worst, laziest, cheapest approach to get into that kind of thing. And just because people do it often enough to annoy you into actually considering that question frequently doesn't make it a good question. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying it's a bad question for people to ask, and we should try and find out about other people in better ways, asking better, more specific questions rather than just lazy, boring ones like, what's your favorite? I mean,
Well,
if
I'm
you
going
asked me right now what my favorite Australian film was from the ones that we've listed, we probably listed, I don't know, 20 odd films. I couldn't tell you which one my favorite was.
I can tell you can ask me what's my favorite anything, and I could probably give you a good answer.
Oh, here we go. Here we go, Adam. I think we better put Carl to the test here, since he seems to be, going all about how he's already done it. So, Carl, favorite ice cream flavor? Go.
Vanilla?
I actually don't feel like I want to ask more questions now. I'm just going to be disappointed. It's like, what's your favorite chips? Original. It's like,
No,
oh
no.
no.
My favorite chips are kettle chili chips.
Whoa, wow, that's super specific. All right.
If I
Favorite
go
hat?
into the supermarket aisle, they're the ones that for the majority of the time, I'm gonna go for. Majority of the time.
All right. What's your favorite hat?
Um, I I like sporting caps
Boarding
that aren't
caps.
beaked.
What's your favorite type of light globe?
I like the LED ones because they're energy saving.
Damn it! Damn it! He's got it all. He's got it all, Adam.
He's some kind of freak.
I actually sometimes list out like I sometimes go like I'm gonna list out my top 50 favorite of something sometimes just for fun.
Oh my God.
Is that a hobby you're
Carl,
too
this
into,
is
Carl? Is
not a
listing
normal
everything
thing.
out?
This is pathological.
It's actually is a normal thing because there used to be a website when I was younger. You would list
Oh
everywhere. It's
my
like a social
god.
media website, and
Oh
people
my
would
God.
list their favorite things.
Carl, do you own like what is it, Mondo Media? They're just doing all the top. You should do work for them. All the top tens they keep doing
Carl,
on YouTube.
have you ever worked for BuzzFeed?
No, I haven't. I think I'm gonna. You know what, Adam? That's gonna really piss you off. I'm gonna continue asking people what's their favorite things for the rest of my life, and I'm never gonna. And I don't care. I enjoy asking it, and I enjoy hearing it.
This is gonna be.
It's my
Well,
favorite
I mean,
thing to ask.
to be honest.
I've seen your frustration, Adam. Like I've asked you guys, like, what's your favorite Warhammer model? And I've seen your eye twitch, just like I can't think of every Warhammer model.
I still remember you getting angry about my favorite Warhammer model, Carl. I don't understand why you don't like it.
It's a great model. It was the most generic answer ever.
Oh, what do you mean? Wow.
My favorite character
Says the man whose favorite ice cream is vanilla.
vanilla.
So it was like my favorite character in Star Wars is the Stormtrooper. That's pretty much was your answer. Like,
yeah, but Carl, when you've made 200 Stormtroopers, you probably would be like, yeah, they're probably my favorite, you know. Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, in seriousness, this isn't like an issue which keeps me up at night. I'm playing it up a little bit.
I'm scared
for
to ask
comedic purposes, but
ever.
at the same time, I mean, I feel like I'm making a legitimate point. Maybe I'm coming across as some kind of comic villain here with my absurd insistence on this one specific particular thing.
When we hang out, it's going to be like me turning to Andy. Hey, Andy, what's your favorite this? And then you're just not going to be in the conversation.
Our conversations are already like that. Every time we used to get around to do group painting sessions, it was 2 hours of nothing but that.
Yeah, and it was great.
We had a great time.
This podcast is mostly just questions of what's your favorite X or whatever.
It's awesome.
I want all of the listeners to just keep this conversation in mind well into the future podcasts. If we ever make it to 50 podcasts or something, remember back on what's your favorite questions I will have had to have endured by then.
I sometimes phrase favorite questions like this as well. I ask like, what's your favorite song? Someone goes, I don't know. I have so many. I'll say, okay, you're going on a desert island. You can take one song with you. What are you going to take? And then they're like, I don't know. And I go, well, I guess you're taking no songs then, because you got about 10 seconds to take a song.
It's like you're the pilot.
Andy, honestly, when he was saying, when he said that he rephrased the question, a small part of me, hoped that he was rephrasing it to a more meaningful, answerable question. But no, he just doubled down. Instead of asking, what's your favorite? If you could only pick one, and you have to, or you get none.
That's it. It gets me.
Oh, you're like those fucking shitty teachers who like always punish their students unnecessarily.
Wow, I don't know
if you
where
don't
that came
keep
from.
your meat, you can't have any pudding. How can you have your pudding if you haven't had any meat? That's you and
Great
favorites.
song. Great song. Oh, dear.
We're going to talk about, so I have some work colleagues that have amusing conspiracy theories. They believe, or I should say they believe in every single conspiracy theory as that
collectively, not individually.
Yeah. Not, or some of them individually. Like if it was written on a forum somewhere, then they believe it. But it makes for some amusing conversations, especially on our behalf, about conspiracy theories, particularly flat Earth. That's the one that they don't subscribe to. There's no flat earthers in my workplace, but
and hang on, Carl. You know why?
Why?
Because flat earthers is a conspiracy made by the government to make other conspiracies seem less valid. That's why. It's a red
It's
herring.
the lizard people.
It's,
It's the Illuminati.
it's
There
just
are
it's a
people-
conspiracy they put out to make conspiracy theorists look dumb. That's why it's literally like a shit sandwich that they're just like, look, you don't want to believe in conspiracies because look what the people who believe it's conspiracies believe in.
Well, Ryan Garcia, who's like, I think his name's Ryan Garcia. He's a really, at the moment, he's like a really famous boxer. He's won his last 13 boxing matches. He's going to be like the next Mayweather. He just went on a podcast, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and said that he thinks the Earth is not round. It's like a dome, if not flat. And he's like an actual reputable celebrity now, believing that. And I think,
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by reputable celebrity, but
well, he's a big deal at the moment. He's got like 2 million Instagram followers, and like, and there are some. I think there's some rappers as well. B.O.B. thinks the Earth is flat. He's a rapper who's got some hit songs. Like, it's a thing. There are people out there that believe the Earth is flat.
I just wonder how they get to that position. Like, how do they get
it's
to?
a funny thing, Andy, actually,
The Earth
because
is flat.
studies have been done on this, and it turns out there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different little groups in terms of what people think. You know, some people.
So it's not like it's just like one theory about this is why this is the Earth. It's flat, and they all believe flat.
Although I think a lot of them have sort of picked it up through the internet now these days, and belong to a certain strain of thought. But I mean, for example, there's a whole bunch of people who sort of believe the Earth is flat on like fundamentalist religious grounds, like from
Yeah,
a hyper literal reading of Genesis, for
It
example.
says, it says in Genesis the four corners of the earth, and there's an angel on all four corners. So I think that some of it comes down to them thinking they know something that no one else or the vast majority don't know or understand, gives them a bit of that like I know the earth is flat, everyone else is stupid. Like it gives them kind of that recognition, like I'm actually smart kind of thing. That's what I always thought it came down to. At
Yeah, no,
least.
definitely. I feel like people feel like they've got a secret that they know that nobody else kind of
Exactly.
knows yet. Yeah, like, I don't know. I felt like a lot of people used to be about how the moon landings were all faked. Going back into some more classic conspiracy theories, moon landings were faked. Area 51 is where the aliens are being kept. Oh, man.
And it surprises me how little they know about anything they're talking about. Like when they bring up these like I joked about with you guys about how there was a guy at work who was trying to convince me that they have the cure for cancer and they're hiding it from us, and he didn't even know what the World Health Organization was. Like, and it's like you're trying to argue with me about the pharmaceutical industry and medicine, and you don't know. And I've also argued with people about the moon landings, and they're like, "Why did we only go once?" And I'm like, "There was 6 moon landing missions. What are you? Have you done any research at all? Like, have you just watched one 10-minute YouTube video and come up with this?"
Unless Carl, the other 5 were faked because it was too expensive.
But they don't even know of those other ones. They're like, "Oh, what?" Like they haven't looked into it at all about any of these theories. Like most of them don't even know like anything about these 9/11 conspiracy theories about like oil in the Middle East, and they were just trying. They don't know anything about like the invasion, the Iraq invasion, the Gulf Wars. They don't know. They've just come up with, oh yeah, oil, and they kill people. Like they don't know anything about the situation, and they don't care. They don't want to know more. They just want the easy answer. Or someone, it's easier for them to just go, oh, it was done, the moon landing's fake, than to actually go out and try and understand how they achieve that.
But there is, specifically looking at the moon landings, because I've been kind of interested in how people have gone, like try to make out like, oh yeah, this is faked. Like they're bringing up images of the moon where you've got shadows going in different directions on the stones. You've got the flag is waving slightly. They'll look at the astronauts bouncing on the moon and be like, oh yeah, he fell down, but look, there's definitely cables holding him up just the way he's bounced back. I've even seen some people looking at more recent footage of people up at the International Space Station, and they're just like, look, see that guy? it looks like he's just about to grab the cord because she's just about to fall off or something. It's all a play. Like they're all just a bunch of actors somewhere, like in Hollywood or in, I don't know, some bunker in the middle of Arizona. Just all trying to play this off as some massive PR stunt for America or something like that. It's interesting just how far some of them I think do go. Though I would agree with you. Sometimes they do not understand the full specifications of the series of events. Like it's like once you start thinking, you're like, all right, let's just for a time being assume that the Americans faked these moon landings. All right. Now they did it in a time of intense political turmoil. There was the big Cold War between them and the Russians. How is it that the Russians never found out that it was fake? Like, why would you fake something like that and like open yourself up to the backlash that would happen if they found out it was fake? Like the Russians were like, haha, look, here's the actor, here's the set. We've got like all our microfilm like shots of everything.
There's so
Like-
many, you can pick it apart like crazy, but the problem is, Andy, no one's making YouTube videos on why the moon landing's real, so they don't get those kind of situations. Like you can pick apart like the shadow incidents. You can pick apart like that. I just
Well,
don't
and people
believe.
do make those videos, though. I mean, the thing is that, of course, YouTube doesn't recommend them. That has its own issues with the YouTube algorithm and so on. But I mean, I just wanted to say that, I mean, years and years and years ago, I was very interested in all this stuff. Well, more from the debunking side. But back then, it was more kind of a niche thing on the internet. You'd have the old whack jobs in the little corners of the internet, and they would be putting forth arguments. People would be writing these long essays, breaking it down, and it was really informative, really interesting, and it was kind of fun in a way. But I feel like things have changed a little bit over the course of the past, I don't know, 10 years or so. Definitely, it's less kind of a fringe, loony kind of thing. There's definitely, I think, certain large-scale cultural changes which have been partly brought on by the internet and partly by, other stuff. I don't want to go into an analysis of the current state of the world. It's a little bit too broad in scope for this conversation, but I mean, yeah, on the one hand, it's very easy to tear people down individually and say, oh, well, it's pretty arrogant to think you know better than all of the scientists in the world put together. And yeah, that's definitely true. But there's also a lot of psychology and sociology that goes into these kind of movements that I think is really fascinating. And again, I don't think we have really the time to go into all of it. But yeah, the conspiracy stuff, it's fascinating. These days I don't really follow it so much anymore because it's a little bit, I don't know, depressing in a sense. Like there's nothing that you can really say to get through to some people, beyond the point of being reasoned with. And there are people who try and argue against people who have fallen down the rabbit hole, but it's just a waste of time and energy, I think, to some extent. Not always, but frequently, because you just can't, people don't reach these conclusions from a purely rational point of view, even if they're trying to construct rational arguments in a very kind of quote-unquote scientific way. I think fundamentally people look for alternative ways of seeing the world to satisfy other needs, let's say.
Okay, they're already on that path and they're just looking for more pieces that fit in that puzzle that they're already doing.
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't think anyone wakes up one morning and thinks, what if lizard people are secretly running the world? I'm going to go out and find evidence for it. But people maybe have a certain mindset of wanting to, understand what's really going on, and they go out, and the internet is more than happy to supply you with all of the nonsense to satisfy that.
If anything, it's kind of specifically taking the lizard man idea. It's like maybe the person already doesn't trust people in the government, feel like they act way too robotic. I mean, there's a bit of a joke going around that Mark Zuckerberg isn't human; he's actually an android, and people just point towards his clammy skin. And in fact, he once said, I think once said, what was it? It's like, yeah, because we're all human, and I was human. I mean, and human, ha ha. And they'll take little bits like during the congressional hearings, he was the way he drank water. It's like no one drinks water like that. Look at him. It's like he's just pretending to have water just to like make us believe that he's human, but really he's just a lizard man trying to take over. And you're like, okay, look, maybe he's just a really quirky guy, all right? And he's not just a lizard in a human skin, like running around trying to take over. Like this just feels.
I I don't think I've
it feels like an
ever
escape.
heard. I don't think I've ever heard a conspiracy theory that actually I thought, maybe. Like they are all so just like not thought out in any way. Like I haven't had one.
I feel like it's because all the legit ones are just like, oh no, they're actually like a legit conspiracy against a government or a coup d'etat or something. Like they actually happen. You call it a different name. Like conspiracy theories, I feel like they have their own kind of little niche of like it's a quirky little thing that some people believe, and you just sit there with a bucket of popcorn, just being like, all right, explain your rationale behind this, and then you just enjoy like the way they're trying to piece together all these different random facts and different pieces and try and make a logical argument out of it. And then you might.
But they're ridiculous, Andy, and also like I'm surprised at how many people actually believe this. Like I couldn't believe that all these people around me, when I joke about, can you believe this? They all actually do genuinely believe. I think there is a correlation as well between like I find a lot of people that believe these things, which I'm finding more and more the majority believe these nutcase theories, especially now our generation. And I find that there is a bit of a correlation between these people who believe these theories and like people who believe other kind of weird things, like about anyone adults that believe in ghosts and believe in psychics and other kind of things that obviously have no credibility. I find that it's the same kind of people that believe these kind of things. Like I've had conversations with adults about like multiple about ghosts. Like I think the majority of people I know believe that like there are like hauntings all the time, and I can't believe it. I just can't get over it.
Yeah, but Carl, there's all these movies about them. How could they not be true? And you've got all those. You've got all those. What about on Foxtel? Well, no, it's not, it's Foxtel. Don't they have all those like ghost hunters and things?
Yeah,
they
and
obviously find ghosts.
No, they don't. They never. If you watch those shows, they never find them. And I had a big not an argument. I had a big discussion where I pretty much just listened to one of my high up managers talk about how their TV sometimes turns on and off, and that means that their house is haunted by a ghost of a little boy, just because their TV turns on and off.
I like it.
Like,
Why is it a little boy? What is your higher manager hiding, Carl? Why is he trying to plumb it up as a ghost of a little boy coming off? Why is it haunting him, Carl? That's the question you should be asking him. Not, do you actually believe in ghosts? It's like, why is it haunting you, sir? And how much do you want it to be gone?
If we're going to broaden the scope of the conversation to, let's say, more, I don't know,
traditional
thinking.
Traditional stupid thinking.
I mean, there's a pretty obvious glaring topic which I kind of don't want to bring up, but
yeah, I understand where you're going, but we'll save that one for another time.
Save that one for another time.
The R word.
The R word.
Yeah.
What's the R word?
You'll figure it out, Eddie. I want to tell a quick story.
It's a race car? No.
It was pretty funny that the other day at work, so I had one of my colleagues start telling us that the Earth was shaped like an egg. Okay, so and I thought, no, not again. Here we go. And I just thought at this stage, I'm like, you're joking, mate. You're joking. I tried to explain to him how like in my very, very limited knowledge of why things are spherical in space and things of that nature, but he just wouldn't have any of it because. And I went home and ranted to Adam about it. And Adam, do you want to explain? Because I was very shocked that there is actually some kind of like accuracy to what my colleague was saying. So I thought it would be interesting if you
Yeah, didn't you know this, Carl? It's common knowledge. I mean, come on,
recount,
man.
Adam.
Well, the point is that really I think he's just either been misled or misunderstood.
And keep in mind that Adam is doing his PhD in gravity physics, so he has credibility.
But the point is that, I mean, in a sense, you could say that the Earth is egg-shaped or pear-shaped, but I mean, not really. I mean, yeah, but nah, kind of way. Because the truth is that, yes, if you take a collection of mass in space with net zero angular momentum and you just let it collapse, it will eventually form a sphere. That's how gravity works. But if you take a spherical object and rotate it, then it will bulge in the middle. That's the centripetal force in action. But that assumes that the material is, homogeneous, which is not the case for the Earth, for example. The Earth has its crust, the mantle, the core, which are all different materials. They interact in different ways. There's liquid rock, and
Not to
so on.
mention things on our surface as well that would change, like in terms of like
Well, yes,
land masses being different.
to
Like,
an extent. To an
yeah.
extent, yeah. And so what this means is that because there's this inhomogeneity, it's possible for parts of the Earth to be denser than others, and that's basically what this is. And the thing is that you have to understand that I can't remember exactly what the numbers were.
It's like a centimeter almost, like a
I think for
minuscule amount.
the amount bulging outwards at the equator compared to the poles, that bulginess is something like, I don't know, a centimeter per kilometer or something like that.
Which is nothing.
And then this egg-shapedness is something like a millimeter or something like that, possibly even less. I don't remember. I did look up the numbers when I was talking to you. I wish you'd given me a little bit of a chance to find them again.
Sorry, Adam, but the
because
point of the
geoscience
story,
isn't my strongest suit. But yeah,
the point of the story was that the next day I had to walk into work because I'm a person like I'm a person of my principles, and I had to walk up to one of my colleagues and apologize. I never thought in my life I would be walking up to someone and apologizing, saying, "No, you are right. The Earth is actually shaped like an egg." I never thought that would happen, but that
well, yeah, but I mean, Carl, it's not
actually did
really
happen.
shaped
Yeah,
like an
it's
egg.
not really shaped like an egg. It's like
Yeah.
it's an elliptoid.
Well,
it's just slightly wider at the outside.
Which I mean, we're talking about literally. I mean, these things are still being measured to this day. That's how small the effect is. It's completely imperceptible visually. You have to take like gravimetric readings and stuff like that. It's
I
the
said
Earth is
that. I explained that like, obviously it's a fraction, but I still think it's enough for me to say, okay, I attacked you without a full understanding of the
well,
situation. I felt, yeah, so
just so long as he doesn't think that if you go to space and took
You
a
will see an
picture of
egg.
the Earth, it looks like an egg. I just want to make that super clear for everyone listening. The Earth does not look like an egg.
We'll save you the ticket on the for your space flight. You can give it to us
Actually,
instead.
there's a funny picture that was going around. I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, of the lumpy Earth. Did you guys hear about this?
no.
Is this where they've drained away the oceans and they're taking a look at the Earth?
Well, sometimes it goes around with that caption. That's not what it is. But basically, there's a picture of the Earth, which is super lumpy, and people are saying like, "Wow, this is what the Earth really looks like." This is what science, and it's like, it's exactly what we're talking about, but it was for a paper, and so these differences were massively, massively exaggerated, and they produced this picture that looks really lumpy and weird, and people were like, "No, this is really what the Earth is like." It's like, it's very depressing.
Yeah.
This is
Tell me
what,
about it.
like, this is, you have to understand, this is what life in science is like. If you go to study science for a long time at a high level, then this sort of stuff, you see it everywhere, and it's you just have to kind of throw your hands up in the air sometimes.
Do any of
and
your
go,
friends in the scientific community ever believe any of these kind of things? Have you ever had these kind of arguments with actual reputable,
well, not about lumpy Earth.
the other stuff, like moon
Yeah, look,
landings and things like that?
no, not really conspiracy type stuff in general, but it's worth saying that, I mean, I do know of a few people, at least by reputation, who are fucking nut jobs. But even otherwise, I mean, people who go into science, good scientists, should have adopted a scientific way of thinking, more so than the average person. But no one is perfect, and no one should think that they are too smart or too well educated not to slip into their own biases or their own mistakes, because it happens all the time. I mean, everyone believes something fucking stupid. I guarantee it. Scientists included. Scientists are definitely not
Well,
perfect robots.
a lot of these people who write these books about these conspiracy theories, they do have like some slight amount of like something, like it reminds me of, the Simpsons episode, like, this guy's the head of the spaceology department at the corresponding college of Tampa. Like, and it's just like this crazy nut job. It's like he's got like the very slight amount of credibility, like, yeah.
Yeah, but this is part of what makes these conspiracy things interesting to me, I think, because it very, very rarely, at least when it comes to stuff like Flat Earth in particular, or the moon landings, it's not like people are portraying themselves as anti-science. It's not like, people are saying scientists like science is wrong. It's scientists that are wrong. They've been corrupted. NASA is bribing everyone or whatever. But, the truth is out there. You just have to investigate. You just have to come at it from the right point of view. And it's interesting, again, from a sociological standpoint, because in a sense, it's a misunderstanding of what science is and how it works. But there's kind of still I don't know, I don't want to say the right spirit, but
I like to think of a lot of these conspiracy theories as like it's like a mind game in a way. It's like a question's brought out or an assumption's made, and it's just like, all right, how do you how do you build up that assumption? And so they're still coming up with examples and evidence in some respects. It's just very passionate, not very put together, and it's like it's put together with sticky tape and a bit of gum. So it's interesting seeing people's thought patterns on why they think that the moon landings are fake, or the Earth is flat, or 9/11 was an inside job, or something like that. It's just like, all right, why do you feel like that? Like, like, obviously you've got a question, or you've made an assumption. You've obviously based it on something. Like, let's walk through it. It might be a little perverted from like reality, or like all the facts, but still there is like some deduction going there. You are still checking off some boxes in terms of like, all right, this guy said this and this would insinuate that, and let's put some other facts together and see what kind of hypothesis we can build out of that, and see how we go. But yeah, I definitely find more fun dissecting these things, and or sometimes just thinking about, well, what happens if they are true? What happens if there is a car that can run off water? Bring up some old classic ones from an old TV show I used to watch, or just watching like watching an old TV show like The X-Files or The Lone Gunman. They just kind of build off these old conspiracy theories and being like, all right, well, what's the logical conclusion to some of these? We'll follow them along, have a bit of fun with it. Seems like Hollywood definitely has a lot of fun with conspiracy theories. I mean, like, that classic film Men in Black is just built off the whole Grey Man Area 51 thing. It's just like, oh yeah, all the men in black, the government suits, they're actually just here to protect us and, have a bit of fun with it.
Can I leave you guys with a very paraphrased quote from Giorgio Tsoukalos? I think it's pronounced. He's one of the main people on Ancient Aliens who believe that all the, ancient structures and ruins of our past were built by aliens. He said that
I should say that in itself is a really, again, sociologically interesting conspiracy theory in terms of how people come to there and the history of it and all that. But anyway, no, go on.
Definitely. And he said something along the lines of, in one episode I was watching, the only way you can ever disprove the ancient aliens theory is if the aliens show up and tell us that they were never here. That's the only way you can disprove it. So that goes to show what it's like arguing with some of these people and their logic. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, for the listeners at home, if you ever find yourself thinking that, maybe one of these conspiracy theories is true, just remember that the world is scary and confusing and random. Nothing happens for a reason. Nobody knows what they're doing. That's it. We all die scared and alone. Anyway, thanks for joining us.
We'll always be here for you.
Just keep listening to the FMG podcast. Feel grateful that you're living in a time where such a great podcast exists and you can listen to it. So and
make sure to share our podcast with everyone that you know and also everyone that you don't.
Definitely. Take care, everyone.
Feel free to leave suggestions as well.
Oh, I'd tell it what. Should we ask them what the New Year's resolutions are? If anyone has them?
Why not?
I can.
And their favourites.
Their favourites. Definitely. New Year's resolutions and favourites, everybody. I want to see them. It's your homework for this podcast.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Catch ya.